A look at the games industry from a former Microsoft executive, Laura Fryer. And the title of it is Games Industry Bubble. And there's been a lot of games that have come out recently that have had like a lot of controversy around them, whether they failed like Concord or just like people argued about it, like Dragon Age. All right, let's see what's up.
It's no secret the games industry is struggling. Millions of dollars have been lost and thousands of layoffs have occurred. Even games with mild success will not make their money back. One would think that these failures would create a moment of crisis, a moment of self-reflection in the industry, that studios would realize that instead of lecturing gamers about what they should want, they would listen and understand their fans. You know, the people who want to be entertained, who want to pay to play their games. So how did we get here? Why is it so difficult for the feedback to get through? Why aren't studios listening? Well, the problem is that over the years, they've created a bubble. And unless they turn things around and step into the light, things are only...
I love how they talked about a bubble and then showed Dragon Age.
Things are only going to get worse. Let's talk about how this happened. When I first started in games, you made a game, got ready to ship, and then you talked about it at E3. You let people play, and sometimes you even had gamers at E3. It felt like a fun geek fest with friends. As games became more mainstream and made more money, things started to change. The press became more powerful, and reporters that wanted to increase their audience might do so by creating breaking news about your game. Sometimes that was really good, and the game developer would score a magazine cover.
You've seen this video, you think, and she knows her stuff? Really?
Sales and a lot
okay,
more
now I'm even more interested.
Sometimes it wasn't so good because a lot of game developers weren't great at selling their games. They were just great at making them. They might say something wrong about...
True. Hey, you guys know I love you over there, but I say this about Overwatch all the time. Not all the time, but sometimes the marketing for Overwatch is awful. I sometimes think, I look at stuff and I go, what the hello? What's going on over there? Sometimes if a game is good, or sometimes they make a great game, the marketing behind it, which is very important, just doesn't hit. There's just nothing there. Kiriko Gripper's tweet reaction flats. The fact that that was probably some of the most marketing it's gotten in a while I just want to roll my eyes.
About the game, or maybe a reporter would misunderstand. This could end up costing the game developer shelf space, sales, and sometimes their job.
Noise in their makeshift trailer park across the street from E3.
I think it's more honest. Like, we don't have to put on a big show. Our big show is our technology.
Naturally, what happened was the game developers and publishers started to evolve out of self-interest. They needed to protect their investment, so they would set their message and their narrative very specifically before they went to E3. The last thing they wanted was for a reporter to misunderstand and print something that would hurt the game.
True.
Now, instead of game developers working 8-hour shifts on the show floor discussing their games, companies moved to designated spokespeople and had secondary people manning the booth. Many companies staffed their floor with beautiful contractors that couldn't answer any in-depth questions.
Really? I've never been to an E3. I went to PAX, but I feel like that's not that uncommon. And like companies for a long time have always been afraid to put someone out front. That's why for many, many years, even in Overwatch, like the only person you ever knew of was Jeff from the Overwatch team. It's like, hey, this is Jeff from the Overwatch team. And then there was the guy from WoW. Fuck, I forget his name off the top of my head. Like other than those, like people, like no one ever knew anyone. Like there was never anyone else that was like forward facing. Like everyone else was just kind of like super anonymous, which has changed in the last few years though. But like for a long time, that was the only way it went. Out of college, I didn't have a job at that point. We have a fake company to get in. No way, that's awesome. I respect it.
Aloha, welcome to the Maxim Video Game Quiz.
This worked really well. Instead of having kind of a grumpy developer that had crunched in order to get their E3 demo done, you had beautiful, bubbly people, and they would set a great first impression of your game.
True.
Oh my god, I know this one too.
The green guy.
Giovanni? No.
The turtle.
Fabio? No. Leonardo?
An added benefit was that no reporter in their right mind would quote one of these people as some kind of expert on the game, so it took away that risk. If a journalist wanted an in-depth interview or wanted specific questions about the game answered, then they were...
I feel like if you did that today, though, people would 100% still run with it. The reporting space has changed a little bit. You know what I mean? It's like, well, you're at their booth, you're representing them, you didn't know the answer. Boom.
To a PR spokesperson. And these people were trained. They were intimately familiar with the game, and generally they didn't say anything stupid.
And fortunately, we have a product for people who aren't able to get some form of
Interesting,
connectivity. It's called
Lucky.
Xbox 360.
Right. So stick with 360. That's your message. If you don't,
Well,
you don't like it.
if you have zero access
Yeah.
to the internet, that is an offline device.
This also really worked to increase the star power of game creators. People like stories about another person, right? It's hard to
Howard.
tell a story about the 150 people working on the game. It's just too much for people to keep track of. They
Yep.
want to hear about the star. Who is the co-creator of Halo? Who is Jason Jones? That is what they wanted to hear. These spokespeople
True.
became famous, and often the press became their friends. It's natural for friendships to develop over time, and it helps in interviews if people know each other.
It's
Yep.
great to see you again.
It's good to see you as well.
good to
People
see
are
this
waiting
still
for us to
going.
get back together, and now is
And
the
I
appropriate venue.
do always enjoy it where you make up features and ask me if they're actually real.
If you go back in a time machine, like what, maybe 8 years ago, super probably positive impression from fans and from gamers who are like, oh yeah, that guy made, it owns the studio that makes Fallout, they make Skyrim, like, I just need a few more years and then, we'll get the next iteration. It's gonna be great. Like, the games are awesome. But as time marches on and the expectations don't get met, that person goes from the hero to the scapegoat.
Exactly. And then you go back and build them, right? No.
Sometimes yes. Sometimes
Old
yes. You get the
YouTube
pressure to
logo,
do that.
true.
Yeah.
This created a star power on the interface too. Suddenly, you weren't just a journalist. You weren't just a buyer for GameStop. You were friends with some of the most famous and powerful people in the games industry. If you played your cards right, maybe you'd get exclusive interviews or get to break stories after drinks one night. And the escalation continued. It became normal to
True.
wine and dine the press and retail buyers. Since games were on physical media, you had to have shelf space, and even better, cross-promotion with major...
Wait, is she going where I think she's going with this? Holy fuck, I was not ready for this.
It was big business. Companies had to manage hundreds
Oh, it wasn't the video, it was the one from Concord. Oh, okay. I was gonna say, this is,
of
I have a feeling I know where this is going. It was not where I expected this to
companies
go.
had to manage hundreds of these people at E3. So Xbox had a handler for every major press person and retail buyer. The handler would make sure that the experience for these people was top notch. For press, it was a PR person. In the Xbox case, they had internal PR and an army of contract PR people from a company called Edelman. They were beautiful, smart, and funny people. For the retail buyers, it was easy because
It's funny, she keeps saying this phrase over and over. I do want to point it out, is beautiful people. It matters. It genuinely fucking matters. It really does. And it's fucked up and it's not, you'd really think by the year 2024, people would have, we kind of would move past it. They don't. They haven't. And if you're conventionally attractive, it actually matters a lot. People view you much more favorably.
Microsoft already had someone internally that managed every account, and so those people would be the guides for the retail buyers.
We got 400 retail pros ready to hang out in the Xbox booth and learn why Xbox One is the best place to play games this year. Where's the best place to play games?
If you were a VIP, you would check in for an appointment at the desk and have a first-class tour. Access to a VIP section where you could eat, drink, and mingle with Xbox and game royalty. On the tour, you might see a presentation by one of the creators, followed by a hands-on demo, staffed appropriately so that your experience was perfect.
Holy fucking shit. The Kinect. What? Dude, I feel like if the Kinect came out today, that thing would have got railroaded. They would have had it did not get shit talked enough. This thing had two functions. Being able to yell through someone else's mic going, Xbox turn off. Or if you used it after you hit a clip, you yelled out loud, Xbox clip that. Or record that. Xbox record that. You're right.
You actually went through 3 hurdles and you still finished first. So that's because I run so fast. No matter how many obstacles I hit, I can just make up for it.
It's only in one ear.
Pretty phenomenal.
If the game was big enough like Gears, there might be an
Is that Paris Hilton?
exclusive party or event. It was also staffed with beautiful people, models, and sometimes even celebrities like Paris Hilton. I remember Paris showing up at the event. She walked over to the bar and slammed a few shots. Next thing I knew, Cliffy's girlfriend was posing for a selfie, and there I was looking like, I don't know, where's Waldo in this picture? It was funny because when Cliffy's girlfriend posted this picture, she made sure to scrub me out of there. I wonder why. Then there were the
No
Girlfriend
way.
posted this picture. She made sure to scrub me out of there. I wonder why. Then there were the press briefings
That's
before
so
E3 started. We'd spend weeks leading up to E3 figuring out which games to include and how to create blockbuster sound bites.
Nah, hang on. I gotta say, she's so real for throwing that in. Like, I do not know who this person is. I've never met them, but I have to say, I have so much respect for them. The fact that they just called that, because that 1000% can happen. Holy f, I feel for them.
That would further drive our message.
I know you plan these things months and months in advance. For anybody that doesn't know, that like the planning for this starts like the beginning of the year kind of thing.
That's right.
It's crazy. So
we didn't want a random reporter setting the tone for the entire week, so we got ahead of it. We set the tone at that briefing and then gave more details later in the week. And it worked. Sometimes reporters would just report your message exactly. Like this.
Oh my God. She's actually blowing my mind, because I've recognized this before, but like there has to be a shred of truth to it. If there is no shred of truth, they will not take what you said at value. But like, I know I've seen this in Corpa speak so many times where like they're trying to railroad their message through. And it's like, if it has no shred of truth to it, it's just like, what the f are you talking about? Right. But also, to her point she made before, where if you like wined and dined them, you know, and like their friends and stuff like that, like they're more likely to actually, you know, report favorably. That's crazy.
Our internal XNA messaging. We knew that it was insanely ambitious to assume creating a game engine like XNA was going to somehow change the entire dynamics of the console business. But reporters liked it and they ran with it. And this still happens. As you saw with Dragon Age, a return to form is exactly what the designer wanted the press to say. Managing the message was critical to a studio's success and was done for survival purposes, but it sadly started to hurt gamers. You now had an industry that was in a bubble. As the friendships and relationships grew, only journalists in the bubble were given exclusives, and sometimes their review didn't match what was going on. Again, you saw this recently with Veilguard.
That's so interesting, but it's like, it's so hard. Dude, it's impossible to know who to believe these days. That's so interesting, because when I never played this game. I don't like Dragon Age because I played Dragon Age Inquisition back in like 2014. Didn't like the game, didn't care. But you see so many different takes from people. Like some people like the game's fine, like it's good, like it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it, right? And then there's some people saying this is the worst thing since sliced bread. Like, or I use the phrase wrong. You know what I meant though, right? And it's like, who do you even listen to? Who do you believe, right?
IGN is walking back their review. Did IGN actually believe Veilguard was a 9 out of 10, or did they intentionally ignore the flaws?
Wait, they walked back their review?
And relationships grew. Only journalists in the bubble were given exclusives, and sometimes their review didn't match what was going on. Again, you saw this recently with Veilguard. IGN is walking back their review. Did IGN actually believe Veilguard was a 9 out of 10, or did they intentionally ignore the flaws? Did they play the game? Did they like the game, but then after they got into it more?
The Veilguard is awkwardly in conflict with itself, torn to pieces that reflects a sequel to a decade-old RPG and a fresh beginning with no ties to what came before.
Or they decided they didn't like it anymore? It's just confusing as to why it appears they're walking back that review. Is it because suddenly they're seeing...
Oh yeah, I hated every other Dragon Age game, but I love Veilguard and I have 38 hours into it right now. Yeah, so like... It's also hard to tell like who, both ways, right? Like who's getting paid to promote it and also who's getting money off of going the opposite direction, right? Like who's capitalizing on going like the hate direction, right? Like it's hard to tell sometimes. That's really interesting.
That gamers don't like it and the sales are going to be low? I don't know the answers, but it's not a new story. Then there were the awards at the shows. For game developers, it was a way to keep score, to get more marketing and support for your game. It was a way to gain more shelf space at retail. Look, an expert loves my game. See, IGN says I'm a 9 out of 10. Please give me more shelf space. This created even more power for the journalists because they had a chance to create their own brand and suck up to the bigger business of Hollywood. Then YouTube took off and threatened to bring the whole thing down because suddenly you didn't have to listen to a print magazine. You could just go watch the game being played online and hear what...
Or I wonder if she's going to go that route. This is what I thought about way back here, was like the rise of YouTubers and like independent people. Like All right, let me give you like a little look into the back of Flats's brain, right? I cannot watch a lot of like regular standard media. I just fall asleep. It's fucking, you can tell it's extremely biased, right? I love watching like individual people. You know, like the guy on TikTok? Oh my God, I forget his name. News Daddy. Yeah, News Daddy. Obviously, it's not always perfect, right? But like individual people, I feel like half the time have better like gathering of skills and gathering information stuff sometimes.
What that person had to say about it. It took a while, but the industry started to notice. I remember being at WB Games and arguing with our PR team about this. Being a Hollywood company, they loved the current setup. They had been cultivating these relationships for years. They knew and loved the model. They didn't want to embrace the new reality. On Gotham City Imposters, we wanted a presence on YouTube, so we made the videos ourselves. All of these videos were done by the actual game developers. They didn't have a budget or help, just their own creativity and time. Once the big companies caught on that YouTube and streaming was here to stay, they started the process again. The playbook was the same. Cultivate a relationship with the most popular streamers and YouTube personalities that love your game and pull them into the bubble. But then, something changed. You see, when you're in a bubble or an echo chamber where no real feedback gets through, it's easy to make bad choices. It's easy to believe the friendly journalists when they tell you what a genius you are and how great your game is.
On the score, yeah, we do mock reviews for every game that we launch, and this is like double digits lower than we thought we would be.
You stop seeing what the gamers are
Holy
actually
shit.
playing. You stop.
This definitely happens though. 100%. This 100% happens. I've seen it actually happen with my own two eyes.
Understanding what they want, you stop listening because all you hear is how awesome you are. Let's look at Dragon Age. It took over 6 years to make that game. And that is very expensive even before you start talking about the marketing. This means you're going to have to sell a lot of copies, and that means you're going to have to appeal to as many people as possible. Look, shipping a game is really hard, and I give these developers a lot of credit for getting it out the door. There's no question that some people like the game, and that's great, but it's looking like it won't be enough, and I have concerns this will lead to more layoffs. Also, as a gamer, I have no problem with game developers taking risks with their content. Who doesn't love innovation? But that doesn't mean I'll buy your game. There are many games I like, and
You know what the funny part is? I have seen this happen. Like the whole, you know, oh, like, yeah, this is great. There's nothing wrong with it, you know, type of thing happen. But it's funny. There's almost like a social pressure too. It's like, are you really going to absolutely flame the out of something that someone made to their face? Sometimes people won't, you know, people will not. And I have definitely in the past ruffled some feathers, positively, negatively, whatever. Dorado. You know what the funny part is? Me flaming Dorado to Aaron, you know, I flamed it even worse in person, right? When I saw him at Porsche, because he went to the Porsche event like that I went to, and there was like a little section on the side, you know, getting food and whatnot. We talked about it again, and I was so much worse. I was actually so much meaner about it. I was like, yeah, like that second point, it's fucking dog shit. Like, I don't even know if it's fixable even with this. Like, because like, you know, they were talking about like, oh, like, you know, we're gonna maybe, you know, think about reworking some of the maps like at the time, right? Which then ended up happening. And I was like, nah, like I was like, I would be very surprised if you actually fixed all the flaws with it. It's so fucking bad. But it's like, it kind of got built up to the point where it's like kind of comfortable to, I'm okay with doing that. Like, I know like I'm not going to get thrown out of the event for flaming Aaron, but I can definitely have seen before, like with either other games, right? I remember I did an event for another game, like playtest something early, and like there was some glaring issues and like nobody brought it up. Nobody said a word. And I was like, no one gonna talk about this one thing that's fucking ass. And so then at the moment you'll think to yourself like, oh, just me. I guess I'm the only person who thinks that. Like, I'm not really like, this isn't like my game. I'm kind of an outsider. I just won't say anything. I'll just kind of leave it alone. It's like whatever. And then it ends up being a problem later. You know what that is called in business? Called groupthink, where an entire group of people constantly will conform to a single idea, whether out of social pressure or like actually believing it. They'll completely become blind to any flaws because everyone's thinking, oh, everyone's on the lookout for problems, but no one else is seeing those problems, so we must be on the right track. But people individually notice a problem, right? They'll individually notice that something's up, but they won't say anything because they don't want to be the person to bring up like, hey, like this sucks because like so-and-so worked on it, right? It's really, really interesting how that can work.
Problem with game developers.
And it's why you like getting a different perspective all the time is kind of important. Whether you agree with it or disagree with it, it's nice to have because it might be something you think about or apply later.
And I have concerns this will lead to more layoffs. Also, as a gamer, I have no problem with game developers taking risks with their content. Who doesn't love innovation?
What's up, Deku?
But that doesn't mean I'll buy your game. There are many games I like and many that I don't. This is true of movies too. And that's the beauty and the challenge of working in the games industry. Sometimes you will make something that you think is good and people don't love it. I was proud of every single game I shipped, but not all of them had commercial success, and it was frustrating. But I didn't blame the gamers for that. Instead, I tried to look back. I tried to self-reflect. What did we do well on this game? What could we have done better? Why didn't this work out? And as the leader of a studio or a game, I always looked at myself first.
War in the North was also a commercial failure, a fact that many critics attributed to the timing of its release, being released only 10 days before the juggernaut of fantasy gaming, Skyrim.
Oof.
Gaming is entertainment. People aren't forced to buy your message or your game. Holding back user reviews for a few days only buys you a few days. Eventually, the truth comes out. Eventually, people notice that
Metacritic is delaying user reviews until 36 hours after a game is released.
you aren't delivering fun games, and they stop giving you money.
Oh my god, dude, I played this game. This game was so f***ing bad, but it was funny. Me, Siegel, and Shade and Emong played it. I still have it. Oh my, Redfall. Yeah. It was so bad. It was actually legitimately broken. Like the whole game barely functioned.
When people ask me why AAA games are in trouble, this is it. Because they're not reflecting on what they could do better. Instead, they're attacking the people that they want to sell their games to. It is not a winning strategy. It reminds me.
Here's the thing. I actually think she's right. But like, I also think stuff gets blown out of proportions like way too much. And I think back in Overwatch land, I think back to a tweet that was made from someone at Blizzard at Overwatch to someone that basically was like, hey man, like it was like angry Twitter like comment stuff. And he was like, hey man, like we're totally open to feedback, but like you don't have to like insult the people that are making it. Like you don't have to attack the person, you can attack the work, right? And that's always like, that's my philosophy, right? As well. Some people take it so far and they start attacking the people behind the work. And it's like, that's so wrong, right? Like you can say a product is bad or why it's bad or whatever it is. But like once you cross that line into like attacking whoever's like making it, like you've gone way too far. And times where people have said that, we're like, hey, you know, like you're attacking the people behind the work, like that's too far. Sometimes that gets misconstrued as you're not allowed to give feedback or we're not listening to you. And then that gets hated on and kind of gets like turned back against them. But it also goes the opposite way, where you've seen certain devs from games that are like gamers are stupid or gamers don't know what they're talking about, like all this stuff, and like attacks the gamers personally. It can go both ways. And I think there can be an absolute middle ground where you can criticize the work and be like, this is not good, or people or things are with it are bad, but you don't attack the player, but you don't attack the dev. Like you have to have this circle in the middle where it's professionally about the product. And a lot of people can't do that. They cannot understand the boundaries that go beyond just the product itself, especially in the age of the internet that we have today, where everyone has a voice and everyone has an opinion, and lots of people like to share that opinion. It can get so loud in here that it's hard to figure out who has good feedback and who just wants to make noise.
It's me of Plato's allegory of the cave. It's where people only see what is on the wall in front of them. They don't see that there is a fire behind them and puppets that are creating the images that they see on the wall. What they're seeing isn't real. And if only they would turn around and walk into the light, they would know the truth. They would be able to change. It's hard, but fortunately,
Wow, we
they made
almost
the
a year
cave.
hyper
They
young.
made the fake reality. They
Yeah,
can
for
turn
months.
around at any time. And I, for one, hope they do, because I really want more great games.
True. I also think part of it, though, is like companies are always going to follow the money. As long as like AAA super games exist, they're going to almost always be at the top until people don't want to enjoy that anymore and they don't want to do something else. Who's to say when that would ever happen? If it would ever happen.